With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning on the AgNet News Hour. I am Sabrina Halvorson here with Lorrie. Good morning.
And good morning.
So we've let the dust settle just a little since Inauguration Day, and we want to talk a little bit about some of the first actions that President Donald Trump has taken since coming into office. And there was quite a bit, so we've got a lot to talk about, but we'll kind of rein it in to things that could affect agriculture. So, and the most important that I see coming out right out of the gate is trade and tariffs. Now, of course, President Trump ran on a campaign saying that the first day in office, he was going to establish tariffs, for our trading partners. And that was a bit of, I don't know if I want to say contention or what, but tariffs can cause some problems for our agricultural trade. But despite that, he ran on the talk of immediately imposing tariffs, and that actually did not happen. We get a little bit of a reprieve on that, which could be good news. What he said he's going to do instead is look at creating the External Revenue Service to collect tariffs and taxes from other countries. And so I think he said something like he's going to take 7 months to a year and let his experts really look into the situation more and decide then what to do with our trading partners. So that actually is kind of a reprieve, I think, for agriculture a little bit, not having to face dealing with new tariffs for our trading partners right out the gate.
It feels a lot less dramatic than the last conversation you and I had on this, for sure. My first thought is another acronym that we have to remember, ERS, for the Internal Revenue Service. And we have to separate that from the Economic Research Service. So, all these acronyms that we have to keep track of. But
Right.
That will be interesting to see how that develops. But as you said, these sweeping tariffs that we had heard sounds so dramatic. It's actually, he came out, and you and I will probably be talking about this again every few days, if not every few weeks, on things, because they do tend to change pretty quickly, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But he has issued a memorandum of understanding, or a memorandum, I should say, instructing the Secretaries of Treasury, Commerce, and Homeland Security to investigate trade policy. So instead of just going in and saying tariff, 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 although that is still on the table and is
Right.
very much being talked about, and the markets are reacting to that right now, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more diplomatic and maybe a little bit more toned down in what happens with these tariffs.
Right. And, and that was something that we had talked about too before, during the campaign and things, the fact that there are times when the president, when Donald Trump is campaigning, he makes big statements. But like what we saw in the first administration was he did the same thing, big campaign statements, big promises. He walked them back and listened to experts. And that, whenever a leader is willing to listen to experts in their fields, that is always a good thing. So I have to give him credit for that. It is an important step to slow down the tariff talk and really investigate into how we can make our trade deals better rather than just stepping in. At least that's what I'm understanding from the experts I have talked to over the last many months.
I'm hearing the exact same thing, that this time around he's been much more engaged with talking to experts before making big decisions. But from what I can tell as well, some of his people, his administration people, have been doing some of the leaking and have been doing some of the drama tactics that we're hearing as well. So it's a little hard to know exactly who and where things are coming from, but I have heard this thing from our ag industry groups that things are a little bit more engaging, and he's doing more listening and taking things into account before making decisions. So we'll just go on that is what's actually going on. But I know that China still continues to be at the forefront when it comes to what's going on with trade and some of the concerns that Trump has with him. Although the leader of China, I don't know if he's actually, I don't know what they call the leader of China. The leader of China was at his inauguration. So there's
right.
that.
They're right. So What does that, I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it, but I kind of want to read too much into it,
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was also very interesting that the leader of China was at his inauguration too. So, is that going to bode well for our trading partnerships with China? I mean, we can hope, right?
Well, my market experts say that there has also been discussions several times with the leader of China, between the leader of China and between the leader of China's people
Hmm.
and Trump's people. And that
Right.
took place before the inauguration. And it is expected that those intimate talks, I guess, if you will, are going to continue after. So there's that. And hopefully that does work out.
Right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about immigration and take a look at what the president has already done on immigration in just his first few days. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We are chatting this morning about the actions that President Donald Trump has already taken since coming into office and looking at immigration now. So, this is another just extremely important topic for our farmers and ranchers. And while we had some good news on the tariff front, I don't know that I would necessarily say this is good news or bad news on the immigration front. It is what we expected and what he said to a point. So he says that he has declared a national emergency due to immigration, and he is sending more military troops to the border with Mexico. And this is going to be just continue to be a problem. Now, immigration, obviously, such a issue for our agriculture. That is a big part of our agricultural workforce. We need to have access to workers. Our agricultural workers primarily come from other countries. Now, I'm not saying that they're whether undocumented, whether here legally, whether here not legally. That's important, but that's not the whole story. The fact is, we even have a lot of immigrants who are here legally working who are very, very worried and don't know how to handle, don't have the right tools to be able to handle some of the situations they're going to be placed into now that there is this target on their backs.
If I would be very concerned if it were me, I know I would. I think the intent here, though, is to get the bad people, the nefarious people, the drug cartels and terrorist organizations. And I think that's kind of the premise of what's going on here is more of safety and trying to keep some of the bad things out that are coming in. However, that being said, I'm not sure how you exactly find that. I mean, maybe there's a lot more going on, a lot more investigation. And now with all the new technologies and satellites and drones and tracking devices, there's probably a better way to know that than even I realize. So maybe there's a better way to pinpoint the nefarious people that they are trying to get out of our country. But I do believe from the readings and even from the updated information since his inauguration, that is kind of where this is stemming from. And
Hmm.
so I don't think he's necessarily targeting agriculture and agricultural workers, but we also know, especially with some of the undocumented cases and some of the sweeps that have already happened at some of our ag operations, even before his inauguration, that agriculture is at risk and operations are at risk, especially here in California.
Right. And obviously, we do need to remove the drug cartels from the United States. I mean, that is an important goal and one that does need to be handled. But like you said, it seems like there should be some type of better tracking. I mean, I don't know, in all the spy movies, there's excellent tracking on. But no, but seriously though, and I don't mean to make light of a very serious situation, just trying to point out, yes, there should be ways that we can know better and better be able to target who is actually causing the problems rather than making families worry that should not have to be worried.
Yeah. And I, like I said, I mean, if I was involved as one of those families, I would be scared and worried too. His policy on this is called Remain in Mexico, just so FYI. I thought
Hmm.
I might throw that out there. If people continue to see some of these things happening and you see that those terms, I guess, if you will, remain in Mexico, that's kind of what this whole sweeping thing is being called. And we talk specifically about California because so much of our ag depends on the workforce, and especially with the amount of ag here and the dairies, the forestry, the nurseries, and of course our specialty crops California is definitely one of the high risk states, but I know this is also being talked about in other states as well. I have yet to see a lot of information coming out from other states, but certainly a lot coming out from California.
Right. And because it is such an important topic in our state, and it is something that, you know, was actively acted on during the President Trump's first time in office, with the state becoming a sanctuary state and putting in extra protections. And you kind of have to wonder about that. And yes, obviously important for personal safety for some of our immigrants and for our agricultural workforce, keeping them working. However, it brings to question how far is too far, and who are, are we protecting some of these people that we really do need out of the country? So it's a delicate line.
It really is. And I know there's a lot of criticism on the Biden administration and the lack of enforcing some of the border rules and the lack of enforcing some of the regulations to help keep some of the cartels and the drugs and the nefarious people out. I know that there has been a lot of criticism on Biden not being strong in keeping this stuff out and letting a lot of this occur. So some of the,
Hmm.
well, I'm calling it drama. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but some of this discussion, really assertive, more aggressive type language and feeling that we're hearing is, Trump coming in and saying, well, for the last few years, we've been so lax. So now somebody's doing something about it. So is it really as dramatic and harsh as we're taking it? I'm not sure.
And that's a great point, because I'm thinking back to the last 4 years under the Biden administration, and I don't recall much of anything on immigration. I know, like, when he was first brought into office and there was still all the work about the border wall and, all the talk on that, and kind of countering some of from the previous administration and stuff, but then it died down. And of course, we moved on to other things. I don't remember action really much at all on the immigration issue. Do you?
No, I don't. I know there was a lot of rhetoric on him not enforcing the wall or tearing down the wall. Biden, I'm talking about Biden, tearing down the
Yeah.
wall. I don't know whatever came about of all of that exactly for sure, but I know that was thrown around the whole time that he was in office. I think it's also interesting and important to point out that Trump says that he is acting under the 14th Amendment in the Constitution as
Yeah.
he interprets it. I think that's just an important point for all of us to remember, that this Constitution needs and does play into any of our policy. And so it's being brought in here.
And that's a very important point, one that I want to keep talking on. We do have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We are talking this morning about some of the actions that President Trump has already taken in office, and we're talking about immigration. And Lorrie, before the break, you had just brought up the amendment, and that is such an important point, the 14th Amendment. And it's actually kind of a sticking point right now with what he's doing, because this also has to do with the birthright citizenship. So if a person's parents are here with, undocumented, they're not here legally or whatever, if that person is born in the United States, they automatically get citizenship. And has been a very important part of our Constitution for many, many, many years. And what the president has done this week is to overturn that. It's to take away that birthright citizenship. And that, I would say, is a lot of our population in California, and probably a lot of our agricultural workforce too. I would think, just from the people I know and knew growing up, people who were born here whose parents were not from the U.S. I think that is going to have a big, that has the potential to have a big effect on things. These are the people, the dreamers. They were in a previous administration. They were called, I forget who came up with that term, but again, taking away that birthright citizenship, that, first off, I'm not entirely sure that that's legal. I think there is going to be some legal pushback on that. And he might not be able to make that change. But that is a significant change that could take away his American citizenship from people who were promised it through our Constitution.
The 14th Amendment, I didn't realize until I looked into it how often this over the many, many years has been litigated. a lot of litigation on that. So I don't think litigation will be anything new, but wow, I had no idea. The 14th Amendment is what really defines what a U.S. citizen is. And the 14th Amendment, just a just brief overview here, and we can dive into it even more. It grants citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. It protects their rights and privileges and ensures that they are equal citizens.
Hmm. Right. So that again is that birthright citizenship. And so we would be eliminating that.
Yeah, born or naturalized in the US. Yeah,
And that's like how all of the original Europeans became American citizens.
that is true. Wouldn't though naturalization cover that or no?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not
We
lawyers.
we need a political analyst on here now. This is getting a little over our head as reporters, or over my head anyway, as a reporter. But um, in his statement, when he does talk about the 14th Amendment, he says that he is reinterpreting the understanding. So that word reinterpreting, that
Yeah.
might go along with what you're saying, and maybe stemming from, and maybe that's where a lot of the litigation cases I just mentioned also stem
Hmm.
from.
And I don't think the president actually has the power. I don't think the office of the president has the power to just change the interpretation of the Constitution. That's going to have to go through a lot of other, uh, you know, it's got to go through a lot of other hoops before that can actually happen. I don't think that can be done with an executive order. It's the Constitution of the United States. One person cannot come in and just change it. It has
Yeah.
to go through all of the, the legal system to make sure, Congress is going to have to be involved on that. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more on that. He can't just come in and say, this is how I want to read this amendment. Could you imagine if the president did actually have that kind of power, though? Any incoming president could do whatever they wanted with our Constitution.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no matter whether you are for or against that president, yeah, that's dangerous, actually. I mean, we are founded
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
Constitution. If this does actually move forward and in the ending of the automatic citizenship to children born to undocumented immigrants, I wonder what that means as far as the children born. Would they have to go through the same process as their parents? Would they be sent back to their home countries? I wonder kind of what process that would go through if that actually ends up happening.
Right. And there's a lot of questions like that have yet to be answered. And I think that this is not going to be a quick process. Any changes that he wants to make here, this is not going to be a quick process. This is going to have to go through a lot of legal channels.
Absolutely. But again, that's where that naturalization process would probably kick in. I don't know how long naturalization takes these days, but if you have your baby, who knows how long that could take
Yeah.
as well. But that's probably, I would guess, maybe the short answer without looking too far into it and without me being a lawyer or a political analyst or somebody who deals in this every single day. That to me would make sense. But see.
Right. Right. And there, it is a long process that they have to go through, and it involves, and there's this, big test that you have to take and all of that. And um yeah, so it's a complicated process. So again, it's one that we're going to be hearing a lot about over the next 4 years, I'm sure. We need to take another quick break. We'll continue looking at some of President Trump's first actions right after this. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We are talking about some of the actions that the president has already taken while in his first week in office. And so we've covered tariffs and immigration. Let's talk about renaming some things. The Gulf of Mexico, he wants that renamed to the Gulf of America. And I think that he can issue that order, but that's going to be so hard for a lot of us to make that change.
It really is, especially when I give that ag forecast. I'll probably stumble on that for the first few times
No,
that happens.
I know.
But I think what he is doing, again, his underlying premise when he comes out with a Make America Great Again terminology, that this does fall under that, that what is really America, what is really ours and what's not, and what have we let gone on for so long that we've all just kind of ended up accepting and terming. And the Panama Canal is another example
Hmm.
of I don't know that I've seen exactly what the name change would be, if anything, but bringing that more back into control of the United States, as we were, if I understand right, we were the main
Right.
country, the main nation that funded that whole thing in the first place.
Right. Right. And then President Carter gave it to Panama. And the Panama Canal is important, especially for shipping and especially for shipping a lot of our agricultural products. And so it's important. And I don't know um, what actual difference it will make if it's under U.S. control versus under Panama. Uh, Panama is not necessarily, I don't think, a big, global power. Certainly doesn't have the global power that the U.S. does. So, um, is it going to have a big effect? I don't know, but I can see that clearly, talk of Panama, with renaming the Gulf, with wanting to buy Greenland. Obviously, President Trump wants America to own more, to have more, to take up more space, which seems very, very much like his personality. So it'll be interesting to watch that unfold as well and see what happens there. I don't know what difference it'll make, but I mean, isn't that the goal of global leaders is always to grow their country?
Yes. And I think it's interesting. This comes on the discussions here in the past year on foreign ownership on U.S. ag land. And you and I even touched on that a little bit on the ag side of things, on ag land, and having huge operations in the United States that either operate here and send their goods back to their home country, or do
Yeah.
things might be a little sketchy. So I think what he's doing is saying, this is America. These are the things we've done. This technically and maybe principle by principle should be under the auspices of the US. And just reading between the lines, this is nothing that I've seen or quoted or even had a direct discussion on, is that he's trying to show, what we have done, how important players we are on an international scale, all the money that we give to other countries, having people come into our country that are bringing bad things in. I think that he genuinely is trying to say, look, let's use our resources, let's use our power in a good way. I hope that anyway, that's a good way. And, rightfully taking back all the things that we have funded. And I think about that. And over the years, all the interviews I've done and all the money that we have given to other countries, mainly for supporting their agriculture industry or to buy food or things like that, does the US really get a lot of recognition on that? I'm not exactly sure. And why the Panama Canal was given away in the first place, I mean, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
want to take the time to really find that out, but surely at the time there was a reason for that.
Right. I was just thinking the same thing too. Why did President Carter give it away? I don't know. And, if I had known that we were going to be chatting more about this, I probably would have researched that this morning. But, um, you know, was it, did he feel at the time, was it inconsequential? I mean, it is very important to our shipping. And so I can see like you're saying, I can see the importance of having that under American control. And I like that you brought in also the idea of the foreign ownership of farmland in the United States, because that has been such a problem. And this is a little bit off topic, so forgive me, but I don't know. It just always has concerned me. Why are we giving foreign countries, or why are we allowing them to buy up our land? I'm, is that a great idea? I don't know.
And you are not the only one asking that. A lot of people are, a lot of our ag groups are, and some of it has to do with location being by
Hmm.
military basis, which is even makes it an even more interesting conversation.
Yeah.
On the Panama Canal thing, one other thing I see here in some of the information that we are discussing today is that President Trump is calling it a foolish gift. And he says that Panama treats us badly. Again, we're not the political commentators. We don't eat, live, and breathe the trade side and the port side and those little details. But I would be curious, and I think in going forward in some of my interviews on our administration and in agriculture, I'm going to try to dig a little deeper into what exactly that means, how we've been treated badly.
Yeah, I have no idea because honestly, I can't remember ever reporting on anything about how Panama treats us at all.
Yeah, me either. Me either. And it says, the treaty has been violated. I have not reported on that either.
Right.
No.
So yeah, some questions there. But then also we know that again, sometimes the president makes these big statements that don't necessarily have facts to back them up. So it goes back, I think, to his business sense or the way that he does business, which is to make big statements that aren't necessarily accurate and to see what he can do with them. And that is an actual legit business tactic.
Yeah, well, I always feel like he runs our country like a business.
Hmm.
And so some of these things, like giving up the Canal to Panama by President Jimmy Carter, might have been more of a political thing, kind of the give and take
Right,
type thing. President Trump isn't into that. Is business,
right.
it's dollars and cents. And to some respects, that's a definitely a good thing. Although, we still have to have good relationships with our trade partners because our ag industry, well, all of our industry, you and I as a consumer, we count on that.
Right, right. We do. All right, we do have to take another quick break. We will be back right after this. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We are talking about some of the actions that the president has already taken while in office. And we were just talking about, well, so far we've covered tariffs and immigration. We've covered the Panama Canal. And there's been a lot of other things as well. But I think that overall, we're just looking at a period of change. And obviously, he's making a lot of big changes that are completely different from the previous administration, which, obviously is why a lot of people voted for him.
Here's another thing. This is directly tied to ag, but directly a societal issue as well. And I think one worth mentioning. So in the Biden administration, and particularly with USDA, because that's where you and I spend a lot of our time, is there was a lot of discussion on underserved groups and a lot of discussion on inclusion and diversity. We even saw this in the National FFA organization over the past year and a half, just a change in using that wording, a change in the culture and making sure that we have equity, inclusion, and diversity. Now, I certainly am not opposed to that, but boy, that came up a whole lot in all my years of ag reporting. I can say that didn't, every once in a while you had a lawsuit or something like that. But this came up over and over in so many different realms along the way here in the last year to year and a half, maybe even before that. But that's when I really started noticing it. And so now Trump is coming in and he's going to end some of these grants that are meant for this notion that all inclusive, everything I just mentioned, all inclusive under the environmental justice title. So he's coming in and he's saying, we're going to end some of these things. And so that's a hard one because I believe in all of those things, but I also believe that we perhaps went overboard. Oh,
Yes. And the changes in there uh, are kind of dramatic. They really are. And and I can see what you're saying where yeah, I also believe in this. I believe very strongly in all of this. Sure, there were maybe some places where we went too far or things were not balanced as they should have been. But there are some very important policies in here because, humans are humans and we all have our personal prejudices and we have to not let those be allowed legally into things like our work and things like that. So, um, it's an interesting, I don't know. I think that there could be a lot of problems with this coming because not having some of these protections. I mean, we've seen a lot of companies, excuse me, recently dropping their DEI policies. Like I just read, just had something about McDonald's dropping its DEI policies. And, the issue again with that is now we don't necessarily have the protections if we have a manager who is prejudiced, or sexist, or whatever. We don't now have those types of as many protections as we did. So it's a give and take.
I know that was a costly move for a lot of companies like McDonald's to meet some of those stricter rules, I guess, if you will. And so that I'm sure I think that was the underlying premise on why McDonald's decided to do that. Plus, they felt like they were already doing that, and they didn't need any more enforcement on that. But also, I know of at least one litigation case where there was reverse discrimination, where some of the underserved groups were getting more money from the USDA Farm Service Agency programs than they were supposed to get versus, I don't know if the served groups would be the right terminology, but versus, I guess, white people. I don't know. I don't know if I'm even being politically correct at this point, but I'm trying. But did not get the program money that they felt they were entitled to, because we went so far on the pendulum the other way that the other groups were getting way more than they should. So it became more about this political environmental justice instead of about the actual metrics that are needed in order to fund some of those FSA programs and allocate those monies.
Yeah, and under the Biden administration, USDA had a big focus on underserved groups. It seems like almost every news release in the last 4 years from USDA was about underserved groups. And again, I completely understand the importance of making sure that there's equity in our programs. That is extremely important. And for the history of our nation, there has not been that equity. And so a lot of the work that's been done has been to bring it back up to where it should be. So, again, like we were talking about with one of the other topics, when you're in such a void, it takes a lot to fill up that void and then to bring things up to where everything else is. So, but with that big focus being on the underserved groups, a lot of the groups that have historically been getting these programs really felt underserved. I shouldn't use the word underserved, but they really felt like they were now in the underserved position. So, again, a lot of it's on perspective. What perspective are you coming from? So again, I think this is another one that there's going to be some litigation involved, and we'll have to see what sticks and what doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, and then I don't know at this point what else to say on that, because
Yeah.
I see both sides of this very much. So it does need to be fair and equity for all groups, no matter underserved, or I guess, if you will, the served, the white. I mean, there should be more of the metrics, more of that, instead of gender, instead of what color your skin is, or where you
Right.
live, or things like that. Well, maybe
Right.
where you live. That should probably be counted, because there are areas of the country that are more productive than others.
Right.
So yeah, that's really a hard one. It's a hard one for us to discuss even.
It is. It is. And you know what? Because of that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about energy. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We are talking about some of the actions that President Donald Trump has taken already this week while in office. And we only have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to hit on energy because this is another big one. And, he laid out a plan to and this is just within hours of taking the oath. He planned to maximize oil and gas production once again here in the United States, and also has declared a national energy emergency, which will allow permitting to go back or to be a lot quicker, and also it will roll back some of the environmental protections that were put in place previously. So that's why he felt like the energy emergency was such a big deal, was to make his policies be able to be enacted quicker. So again, taking a more of an interest in our fossil fuels, oil and gas around the nation. He plans drilling in Alaska. And so this is a complete change. I mean, like the opposite of the Biden administration, which again, we are going to continue to see a lot of.
Absolutely. And in this is a big thing for the agriculture industry, and that is the year-round sales of E15. Now, this is a little bit tricky to talk about as well, and I don't know all the nuances, but I know that California has a different way of doing things when it comes to energy and when it comes to fuel sources. But for the rest of the country, E15 is a big deal. Now, we've had a waiver in the last few years that allows it for certain sales or for certain times of the year, like mainly through the summer, to have E15 at your local pumps, but now this allows it for year round. So that it really is a good boost for the Midwest farmers who are producing the feedstocks, soybeans, corn, sorghum, ethanol, to be able to supply the E15. So that is good news in that realm.
So, but do you think that having this renewed focus on oil and fossil fuels is going to take away from E15?
I don't know. I think in doing some of these interviews over the years, if you visit with folks like Growth Energy, there's room for both. There's room
Mm-hmm.
for both. There's so much growth in the fuels market in general. And of course, you and I have even touched on this. Sustainable aviation fuel is the next big push. From what I understand, there is room for both at this point in time. And especially as more and more people are looking to hybrid vehicles, or even the electric is probably not the best example, but as people are looking to reduce their carbon footprint and becoming more aware of pollution and nitrous oxide and all those dangerous things in the air, I would say, just based on those interviews, that there is room for both.
Yeah. And on the terms of the electric vehicles, from what I am understanding, this focus on energy or the energy emergency also will be pushing back any type of regulations or move to switch over to more electric vehicles. So it's kind of um, pausing or pushing a pause button on that a little bit because of the desire to keep things more oil focused.
That could open up a whole nother segment for us, because as we talk about California relative to other states, although Colorado is following right behind California in this, what is it, by the year 2030 or something like that?
Hmm.
All new vehicle sales in California are supposed to be EV. All the fleets, which are already transferring over right now, all municipal fleets, school district fleets, trucking fleets, are all in the midst of doing that. So what does that mean here? And the slowdown, though, it wasn't necessarily organizations wanting to stop electric vehicles from being manufactured, sold, and used. It was, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the resources and everything needed for that kind of a push nationwide.
Yeah, and that is accurate. I have to agree with that, that we don't have the infrastructure. We don't even have the infrastructure statewide in California to support all of the electric vehicles that are wanted. And yeah, and our clock is ticking down on the show and in the state. Um, but big topics. It's been, I've really enjoyed discussing some of these with you today. I'm sure that I don't know, we probably angered some people, but we just try to tell things how they are.
Yeah, and to the best of our knowledge, because we spend a lot of time in a lot of worlds, not really an expert in any one thing.
Right. Right. That's why we let the experts be the experts and we just tell you what they say.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that has been our show for today. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.